climb is all we know. When thought is not below us, no can go up, and that iron ground.
So as I was growing up, my mum noticed that I was walking a bit funny and I had different issues with my organs such as my bowel and bladder and my kidneys. They weren't working very well. But the doctor that I was seen by at the time thought that I was doing it for attention, so didn't look further into it or anything. So yeah, I pretty much grew up thinking that I was normal, but I just had these extra problems that were there due to anxiety or due to something that I was unaware of at the time of being 10. And then I moved house and I went to a new doctor, and at that point he noticed that I had severe nerve damage to one side of my body. He kept it pretty low key, probably because I was 10 and he didn't want to freak me out. And he sent me for an urgent MRI scan, and during that scan they found tumours in my spinal cord. So they sent me up to Great Ormond Street Hospital in London the next day, and I was 10 and thought it was quite fun that I got to go to hospital with a pink suitcase, not realising how serious the surgery was going to be. So I waited 2 days for the surgeons to fly from America, Germany and France, and once they arrived they did the surgery, which took 15 hours, and I was 10 at the time. They actually found out that they were cysts, they weren't tumours, and so they drained the bottom too because they were compressing my nerves, which were compressing the rest of my body. I had severe muscle wastage on my right side, which hadn't been previously picked up. The surgeons explained because they were working so close to the bottom of my spinal cord that I wouldn't be able to walk again and that I would spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. So at 10, from being normal to being told you're going to be in a wheelchair was quite a lot to deal with. I actually walked out of the hospital 4 weeks later. It was a pretty remarkable recovery, and I was then in complete remission for 8 years. After my first surgery they diagnosed me with a condition called marfans syndrome, which affects your connective tissue, and for me it affects mainly my heart and my spine. Nothing went wrong until I turned 18 and I moved to university. And in New Zealand, when you turn 15 you're no longer a child under the paediatric system and you move to be an adult, and unfortunately I'd fallen off the system, and so I didn't get a heart scan for 3 years that I needed. And by the time I got my heart scan they told me that I needed to have emergency open heart surgery to replace my aorta because it had dilated to a point where it needed to be replaced. However, if they had been checking every year I wouldn't have had to have had the surgery so soon. So once again it was a bit of a shock to my system. I wasn't prepared for the surgery, but unfortunately that surgery changed the pressure on my spinal cord, and so later on in that year, in October-November 2011, I had to have emergency spinal surgery to decompress my spinal cord, similar to the surgery I had when I was 10 years old but higher up in my spine. I became hemiplegic, so one side of my body stopped working just very suddenly. Again, I lost the function of my bowel and my bladder and my kidneys, and everything else just went very, very suddenly. Again, they told me that that would be the end of me walking. The surgery actually went better than expected, and I didn't end up in a wheelchair, and I decided to take a break from uni, and I went to England and went travelling and just enjoyed my life. And then I came back to New Zealand to find that actually things weren't going so well and that my spinal cord had been leaking. So within a matter of months I'd lost all functions again. It was like the third time it had happened in my life. I kind of was expecting it to happen. I had surgery round number 3 for my spinal cord, so I was up to number 4. that surgery didn't go so well. The fluid came back straight away and I had to have another surgery. And then they transferred me to rehab to learn to live in my wheelchair. During that time I had a fall and I had to go back to hospital and have another surgery. Yeah, and then I went back to rehab and I learned to live in my wheelchair. And yeah, things were pretty hard at that time, but I just had to accept that I had a different body that I needed to live with, and that was just the way things were going to be. And it wasn't until a month after I came out of rehab I saw another doctor who said that I had started to become progressively hunchbacked, and because of that my spinal cord was still compressed, and so he told me that if I had my spinal cord stabilised and if they straightened my spinal cord up, then the symptoms would go away and that I might be able to walk. So I went onto a waiting list for that surgery and had that surgery in February 2013. That surgery went very well. It was a very risky procedure. It was an 80-20 chance of me being paralysed, 80% chance of being paralysed and 20% if not. But I thought I was already in a wheelchair, so I would take the 20% chance. And so I had my spinal stabilisation surgery, which is surgery number 5. And yeah, that went really well, and I was transferred to Auckland Rehabilitation Spinal Unit. So I went through a month of intensive rehab of training my brain that my legs were on my body and that I could walk. And yeah, I left rehab on crutches thinking that I would be on crutches for the rest of my life, but since then I've managed to ditch the crutches and start walking normally, which is an amazing achievement and something I thought would never happen, so pretty stoked about that. During my spinal stabilisation surgery in February, they managed to break my sternum accidentally, so I needed to have that refixed. I had that surgery on September the 17th, 2013, and yeah, since then I've been getting better. Sitting here a week after my discharge from my last surgery feels pretty incredible. I've spent 10 months in the last 27 months in hospital, so that's quite a long time, not including my outpatient appointments. So it feels strange that I won't be back in that environment, but amazing at the same time. I definitely don't have any desire to want to go back and have any more surgery. I just want to live life and be out, and obviously later on in life I want to go and work in a hospital and help sick people like they've helped me, but I don't plan on being sick myself again.